Hey everyone, Razma here, back with another Set 5 item guide. This is actually the very last one I have to record, and this is about the Negatron Cloak. So, quick disclaimer before we begin, the units I have listed here are not a definitive list. There are plenty of 3-star units, 2 and 1-star item holders who can all utilize these items well as well. This is more just a general overview that you can use to just play off of. I plan to do more comp-based BIS item guides, unit guides, that and whole deal in a week or two after we see how the meta settles down and I get more time under my belt. With that out of the way, let's get right into it. So we're going to start off with the double cloak item, which is the Dragon's Claw. It has 200 magic resist, and that's its ability. It grants 200 straight magic resist. If you are dealing with a lot of AP, slap this item and you are gonna be feeling better. Any tank unit can use it. Any carry, if you're fighting a lot of magic damage, you know, you're running a Draven and you're fighting a lot of Karmas or Vel'Khazes, put a Bloodthirster on him, put a D-Claw on him, and he probably won't die. The big thing to note about this over the set 4.5 version is since this grants a flat 200 extra magic resistance, an item that shreds MR will shred a lot of MR. So like a static shiv that sheds 70% will shred 140 of this magic resistance, and then this item will only be generating 60. So that's just something to keep in your mind, just in case. The shadow version of this item is the Refracted Dragon's Claw, which only gives 40 magic resistance, but the shadow version ability reduces incoming magic damage by 15%, and it negates bonus damage from critical strikes. So this is very, very good at being just, you know, a decent magic resist item, magic damage reduction. It will negate all critical strike damage, not just bit magic based. So if you know you're fighting an IE, it will negate those crits, but it's especially strong against jeweled gauntlet carries because it negates the bonus damage while giving you good MR. Again, I'd use it on all the same units I would a regular one. Just I would only go with this version if I see people building jeweled gauntlet or an IE. Otherwise, I'd probably go for the regular version if I could. The next item we're going to look at is the Runaan's Hurricane, which is a Negatron Cloak and a recurve bow. It has 10 AS and 20 magic resistance, and the ability is that basic attacks fire a bolt at a nearby enemy, dealing 75% of AD as damage, applying on-hit effects, and they can critically strike. What this means pretty much is your units are going to be hitting 2 units at once. The second unit they hit is only going to be doing about 75% of the normal damage, but it can apply on hit effects and it can critically strike. It's extremely strong on Vayne because it almost doubles her damage because the majority of her damage comes from her ability, which is every third hit does the true damage, and that works. So she'll be dealing that to 2 different people. It's also good on, you know, Aphelios, Draven, Jax. I'm not completely sold on yet because I feel like Jax needs more specific itemization, but it's really good on Kale. Decent item. It's the only combo I'd really go for with this item is with a Deathblade because it helps stack the Deathblade faster and it just scales well off of regular AD. So that's really the only thing I would truly go for with this. The shadow version of the item is the Runaan's Untamed Hurricane, which has 10 attack speed, 20 MR, and the ability is a little different. The basic attacks fire 2 bolts instead of the 1, dealing 50% of AD instead of 75. And the thing with these bolts, though, is they cannot apply on-hit effects, but they can critically strike. So do not use this Untamed version with Vayne. Don't do it. They will not apply the on-hit damage that Vayne gets the true damage. It will not work. Otherwise, it's good, again, if you tame it, if you pair it with like a Deathblade, Aphelios, Draven, Jax, Kale, all very good with the item. Let's move on to the next Negatron Cloak item, which is the Bloodthirster, which is built out of a Negatron Cloak and a BF Sword, has 10 AD, 20 MR, and basic attacks heal for 40% damage dealt, and you gain a 30% max health shield when first dropping below 40% life. So you gain a big shield when you first get low on health. Very good item right now. Healing is very good. Fights are pretty slow, and any chip damage you take, you can heal back up. 4 calls item holders: Aphelios, Draven, Jax, Darius. I really like this item on Jax. I really like this item on Draven and Aphelios. I think it's a fantastic item. I think it pairs really, really well with a caustic QSS, Quicksilver Sash. Well, not Sash anymore, Quicksilver, which makes it so the unit can't be CC'd. In Aphelios, a Draven, a Jax, they can normally out-heal a good portion of damage that hits them as long as they don't get CC'd, so they stop healing. So this plus a caustic Quicksilver, so then they can't get CC'd, is really, really strong. The shadow version of this item is called the Bloodthirster, which has 10 AD, 20 MR, and the ability is that physical damage heals to 40% damage dealt. Each time you heal above 90% health, you gain 30% attack speed for 3 seconds. That can't stack. So if you go like 85-91, 85-91, that won't stack. You won't get a massive amount of attack speed. It'll just keep refreshing. The holder also takes 33% of max health damage at the start of the fight. So the major differences here is that there's no health shield on the Bloodthirster. You lose that shield. The Bloodthirster healing works on all physical damage, not just auto attacks. So it works on units' abilities as well. And you gain that extra attack speed proc, but you start damaged. The whole starting damage thing really doesn't matter much when you're using the Bloodthirster, because the chance of your unit dying before they get their health back anyway, because it's going to normally be on a backline unit besides Jax, is very low. So pretty much what this means is it guarantees 30% attack speed proc. Again, pairing this with a caustic QSS is really good. Pairing this with a Ginsu's Rage Blade, so you gain that attack speed proc, and then you get the faster Ginsu stacks, is very, very good. Overall, I think Bloodthirster and Bloodthirster are two of the best AD items. If you plan on playing Aphelios, Draven, or Jax as a carry, making one of these is never a bad idea. The next cloak item we're going to go over is the Gargoyle Stoneplate, which is built out of a Negatron Cloak and a Chain Vest. Gives you 20 armor, 20 MR, and the holder gains 18 armor and 18 magic resist for each enemy targeting them. Really, this item's okay. It's not fantastic. It's not terrible. If you have if you're playing like a really low frontline, 1 or 2 frontline units, this item actually really starts to shine, because the more people targeting your unit, the more stats that unit gains. I really like it on like a Morgana, like almost solo frontline Morgana. I like it if you're playing like Rel solo frontline, Tarek, something like that. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't use it too much, because, you know, I'm running a lot more than one tank normally in these comps, and I don't really find too much use for it. The shadow version of the item gains the same base stats, 20 armor, 20 magic resist. But instead of the ability gaining armor and magic resist for each enemy targeting them, the holder heals themselves for 45 health every 2 seconds for each unit targeting them. So you know you got 2 units targeting your unit that's holding this, they're gaining 90 health every 2 seconds. Again, I think it's a pretty good item, like the Stoneplate. I don't think it's fantastic. If you can use it on a like solo frontliner, put this plus a regular Stoneplate together, put it on someone in the front line by themselves, it's actually going to make them extremely tanky and extremely hard to kill. So I think like that use case is pretty good, but otherwise probably not. Alright, next we're going to go to the next cloak item, which is the Ionic Spark, which is a Negatron Cloak and a needlessly large rod. This grants 20 magic resist, 10 AP, and the ability is enemies within 2 hexes have 40% reduced magic resist. When they cast a spell, they are zapped, taking 200% of their max mana as magic damage. Pretty much, you use this item when you know you're going to play some magic-based comp, when you want that reduced magic resist based on a tank, and early game, the 200% of their max mana as magic damage zap is actually pretty strong. Overall, pretty decent item. Using a rod in it, like if you're going to play an AP build, using one of your rods in it are a little suspect, but it's really, I still think it's worth it most of the time. The shadow version of the item is the Ionic Dark Spark, which the ability changes. Enemies and allies within 2 hexes are zapped when they cast an ability. Enemies take 200% of their max mana, while allies take 100% of their max mana as magic damage. Whenever an enemy or ally is zapped, the wearer gains 5 AP for the rest of the fight. So the differences here is it loses the MR shred, it can zap your allies as well, except it's a lower damage zap than it hits the enemies for, and it gains unlimited scaling AP to the wearer. Now, it restarts, it resets every fight. It's not like it's unlimited and they keep it in between fights. I think the item has a couple of niche uses. I think Warwick's really good with it. I think Kennen can be viable with it. I think Mordekai's is really good with it. But overall, it's not really going to be used on many other units. I think it can also be like used on Garen because he's AP based. But like you're not going to put this on your own backline because then it's only zapping your backline and the AP scaling is going to go pretty slow. So overall, I think it's more of a niche item. I think it's not something you're going to slam most games. You probably won't even see many people have this most games. But when it does start working out, when you get like a 3-star Warwick with this and he stacks over 100 extra AP, it'll be insane. So it's like one of those type of items. The next cloak item I'm going to go over is the Chalice of Power, which is a Negatron Cloak and a Tear of the Goddess. Whoops, sorry about that. The stats are 20 MR, 15 mana, and the ability is at combat start, the holder and one ally on either side of the holder, 3 total units, gain 30 AP for the rest of combat. So it's like the Zeke's Herald, except it gives AP. You just put 3 units next to each other, you plop this on the unit in the middle, and all 3 units gain 30 AP. You put it on any unit to buff your main carries and supports, and it's always going to be decent. I don't feel bad slamming this at like any time. Even if I'm playing an AD comp, most AD champions have some sort of AP scaling just to like buff their AD damage on their ability, and it's still pretty good. Not great, but still pretty good. The shadow version of this item is the Chalice of Malice. It grants 20 MR, 15 mana, and the shadow version ability is different. At start of combat, the allies on either side of the holder gain 45 AP. The holder of the item loses 20 AP instead. So this one is used to just buff the 2 units on either side. It doesn't buff the unit in the middle. It actually takes AP from the unit in the middle, but it gains a lot more AP for the units on either side, 45. Which means it actually grants 90 AP to either unit on either side. Like 90 AP total, 45 split between the units on either side. I think it's a very good item for buffing like a Karma, a Vel'Koz, a Mord, a Kale, people who scale off of AP quite well. Because like the negative on it is rather small if you throw the item on a trait bot. Something that's just in the comp to give you the traits you need to activate the comp, like a Lux, a Lulu, a Victor, a Syndra. Them losing 20 AP isn't really that terrible, and I still think it's a pretty good item because of that. The next item is the Quicksilver Sash, which is a Negatron Cloak and a Sparring Glove. You will, the stats are 20 MR, 20 dodge chance, and the ability is that the wearer is immune to crowd control for the first 12 seconds of the fight. Stops the unit from being CC'd for the first 12 seconds, same as it has been in pretty much every set. It's good on all your carries. I think it's especially good on Vel'Koz, on Jax, on Mord. People who can be like interrupted and just kind of die. Vel'Koz, because if he gets interrupted while he's casting, the cast fizzles. Mord and Jax are melee carries, so they like having, you know, CC reduction or CC immunity. The shadow version of the item is a Caustic Quicksilver, which grants the 20 MR, 20 dodge chance, and the ability is that the wearer is permanently immune to crowd control, so it can never be crowd controlled ever in any fight. The wearer loses 20% max HP. I think this is a very, very, very strong item on like a Jax, a Draven, and a Philios. People who can normally sustain through damage with a Bloodthirster or a Risk Thirster to gain healing. Because the only time those units normally die is when they get CC'd. So they have to stop attacking, so they stop healing. This negates their ability to be CC'd. So then they can always attack the entirety of the fight. They never stop. I think it's a very, very strong item for those AD carries. I think it works on pretty much everyone listed, same as before. You just have to be wary about the 20% max HP reduction. And the final item for these guides is the Zephyr, which is the Negatron Cloak and Giant Spell. Grants 20 MR, 150 HP. And the ability is at combat start, a whirlwind is summoned at the hex opposite the one the unit the one the holder is standing on. The enemy closest to the whirlwind is removed from combat for 5 seconds, and Zephyr now ignores CC immunity. So if you have a QSS, which we just went over, or you have a Verdant on your units, they will not protect them against the Zephyr. So how to position a Zephyr. If you want to hit, like I have them all the same. So this rise gets a Zephyr, it would hit this rise. This rise gets a Zephyr, it hit this rise. We're going by just like the half being right here. On a 4-level board, it's still the same. It's just where it's just bigger. So the corner will always hit the opposite corner. Corner will always hit the opposite corner. If it's like right here next to rise, it would hit the spot right here next to rise. It would always, that's how the angles go. So like Garen would always hit this Garen, Draven would always hit this Draven, and this Kayle would always hit this Kayle. That's how the opposite thing works, and that's how you can know where you're going to Zephyr every time. That's how you can try to Zephyr snipe. If a guy's playing his carry here, you put your Zephyr here, boom, his carry's Zephyred. So the shadow version of a Zephyr is called the Turbulent Zephyr. Same stats, and the ability is pretty much the same. It lasts 8 seconds instead of 5 seconds. It still ignores CC immunity. The difference is when the affected enemy lands, they gain 30 AD and 30 AP for the rest of combat. So it's very, very good at eliminating one unit from the majority of the fight. But when that unit finally shows up for a fight, they're going to do a lot more damage because they gain 30 AD and 30 AP. So you better make sure that fight is pretty much won by the time that unit lands. I think it's very good if the player's playing like a singular carry type of build where they have all their stuff buffing a single carry. You know, double Zeke's buffing a Draven with 3 items, something like that. You Zephyr that Draven, their team is done. So you Shadow Zephyr that Draven, and their team is done. You know, you get through the rest of the team, Draven comes down. Yes, he has the extra AD, but normally at that point it would be like a 5 or 6 versus 1 scenario, and your team should win. And that sums up all of the Negatron Cloak items. That sums up this item series. I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow me on Twitch. Excuse me. I stream 6 days a week, Monday to Saturday, from roughly 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I explain all my plays, I answer all questions, I focus on educational gameplay to help you guys get better at the game. Thank you for watching, and everyone have a wonderful Set 5.